writing a book, or were the images and memories still vivid in your mind?
The images and memories were very vivid, but what I had done, because I hadn't spoken about this experience fully to anyone, even some of the people who knew, I'd only given them a little bit, very little bit. I didn't want to, and I tried to block it out. So when I started writing, it was almost, they were pouring out too much, and it was very overwhelming. It was very difficult, because also it was the first time that I went to certain places, that I allowed myself to go to certain memories and certain emotions that I not allowed myself to access at all. So it was very, very difficult. And probably one of the most difficult things in the writing was actually writing about the things, remembering the horrible things that have happened. And I tried to take a break from them by writing about times before the war, but that also became sad, because then I began to realize what it is that I really lost. For example, watching my mother cook when she was alive, and things like that, So it became all around really difficult. So I had to step away from the book constantly, for the writing. But at the end of the day, it served as a healing process in a way, because I was able to get it all out.
As a UNICEF advocate for children affected by war, what is the current situation with child soldiers?
The current situation with child soldiers is, there have been some improvements definitely, but there's still more to be done. One of the things that I am pushing, and including some of the other young people that are working with me, is for there to be proper reintegration, because rehabilitation people have done it, but then when you remove a child from the context of war, you put them in a rehabilitation center, and then after they've healed, you just sort of throw them into society without anything to do with their life. Chances are they will go back to violence, and we've seen that. So that's one of the biggest problems now, is how do you do proper integration? How do you provide opportunities for young people coming from war, whether school or whatever it is they want to do, so that you prevent them from re-entering violence? So that's one. The second thing is, how do you prevent children from entering violence to begin with? That's a bigger question, which is, of course, political corruption. How do you get the agenda of children on the priorities of certain government? So those have been the difficulties. And children still continue to be recruited, because as long as there are civil wars, children will continue to be recruited. So that's also another thing we're trying to push, to make sure that children are not recruited at the number which they are recruited. The numbers are still very high, but a lot of understanding about the issue has been done over the last few years. But in terms of taking that knowledge and applying it on the ground, practically, to make it work, hasn't been as good as we wanted to be.
What can ordinary citizens do to prevent children from going to work?
What can ordinary citizens do? It's a big question, but one of the things that I always suggest is, first of all, knowledge. It's for people to understand about what's going on. For people to know why children are driving to and how they are, so that they make sure that that doesn't happen. So people can talk to their senators, to their government officials, send petitions, letters, and things like that, for people to take this agenda very seriously. And I think that's what some private citizens can do. But also in terms of post-conflict supporting initiatives that, as I mentioned earlier, to help to put kids in school, do certain things, and then protect schools and what have you during times of conflict, and so on and so forth. But also with this knowledge of training UN peacekeeping forces, or anyone entering such countries, to know that there are children present in these countries and how you can prevent them from entering conflict. For example, when wars break out, I didn't know there was a safe place to go. If I knew there was a safe place to go, chances are I would have tried to get there instead of just running around and not knowing and then being compromised, So all of those knowledge, if people understand those things, they can set up things in advance. One of the things that we've tried to advocate, which no one wants to do, is as a preemptive measure, is that as soon as wars start, for UNICEF, other various organizations, and even private individuals, to support organizations to go in and set up centers where children can come. But no one wants to do that, because they say, well, the problem hasn't gotten out of hand yet, so you don't receive funding to do that. So But then at the end of the day, you have child soldiers on your hands, and then you have a bigger problem to do it. So really, knowledge and finding ways to support organizations that really work on the ground. And lastly, for people to understand that each person's contribution is absolutely valuable, no matter how little it is. Because oftentimes people belittle their contribution to help in anything, because there are so many issues around the world. For example, the person who decided to work for UNICEF and go into Sierra Leone and go into the bushes and remove me from war is responsible for my being here. The person who worked at the rehabilitation center, the people who gave money for those things to be set up, the people who wrote petitions for those things to be implemented, and so on and so forth. The woman who decided that she's going to adopt a child from a war-torn country to do every simple thing that everyone does has an impact. So it's for people to begin to understand that more strongly.
Thank you very much.
That's
Thank
great.
you.